On COVID, Cabinet made decisions today that further strengthen our level 1 settings to keep the virus from spreading in our community. New Zealand remains in a unique position globally. We have economic and personal freedoms that few other countries enjoy, but these freedoms are under increased threat as COVID surges in the world around us. There have been over 53 million cases worldwide. The case tally is increasing by around 500,000 a day. Many countries have or are re-entering lockdowns, and more New Zealanders are understandably wanting to return to New Zealand, increasing demand for our managed isolation facilities. Now, despite robust infection and control measures, regular testing, daily health checks, no system is foolproof, and transmission can occur, as it has in recent cases, even without an obvious exposure event. It all goes to show how tricky the virus is. And while we have largely eliminated it from the community with more COVID in the world and arriving at our border, it is Cabinet's view that we need to continually refresh and check our settings. As we saw last week with the community case that popped up in Auckland, we can manage and contain cases within level 1 settings, meaning we don't necessarily have to move to levels 2 and 3 whenever new cases appear. However, in order to manage small numbers of cases at level 1, we believe that we need additional precautions in place. These additional precautions are a small price to pay to maintain the economic and social freedoms we have at level 1. All year we have made changes to our settings as we learn more about the virus and the effectiveness of our response. Today's changes are just the latest tweaks to our system. I'll now hand over to Minister Hipkins to set out Cabinet's decisions today.
Thank you, Prime Minister. As I foreshadowed last week, from Thursday morning of this week, masks will now need to be worn on all public transport in Auckland, in and out of Auckland, and on domestic passenger flights throughout the country. Taxi and Uber drivers in Auckland will have to wear them, but their passengers will not. School buses will be exempt, as will charter services, tours and private transport. Children under 12 won't have to wear a face covering, and exemptions will be made on some health grounds. A full list of exemptions will be available on the COVID-19 website. Our intention is to take an educate and encourage approach in the early days. Police can enforce the new rules, but this will be the last resort, and I've had conversations with them about that already. Bus drivers and other transport workers won't be responsible for enforcing the new requirements. Mandating mask use in these environments and locations whilst we're at alert level 1 is, as the Prime Minister's pointed out, a variation of the response that we've taken to date. There's a good reason for that. As we learn more about the virus, we continue to strengthen our testing, tracing and isolation processes and our border measures. The modelling's now telling us that we're at the stage where the tools that we have available to us mean we're better able to respond to community cases with fewer restrictions. That's not to say that restrictions may not be needed in the future, but we are in a much better position to avoid lockdowns compared to where we were at previously. And that's one of the reasons why we're making mask use mandatory in areas where the risk of spreading the virus is higher, such as public transport in Auckland and on planes throughout New Zealand. So we're asking every New Zealander to continue to play their part. We will be looking at whether mask use should be more widely applied in other settings, including public transport around the rest of the country. And we will be getting further advice on how we can further enhance our contact tracing measures. So we're going to be looking particularly at encouraging greater use of the QR code or other forms of record keeping to ensure that contact tracing can get that vital head start. We've seen in recent weeks and months how if we get ahead of the virus through good contact tracing, we can avoid having a wider outbreak to deal with, and we can avoid having to take additional measures on top of that. None of these decisions are taken lightly. We do rely on a lot of advice and a lot of expertise in making those decisions. And this latest protection is yet another step as we continue to learn and we continue to enhance our protections.